Welcome to Calm Drama Stories, the space where women step into the light to share the deep truths, subtle betrayals, and quiet awakenings they carried for far too long. I'm your host, and today's long-form journey tells the extraordinary story of a woman who was quietly written out of her own family's holiday traditions after years of selfless sacrifice. When 38-year-old hospice nurse Clara Mercer receives a heartless text message weeks before Christmas informing her that she's no longer welcome at the family's beloved lakefront cottage, she faces a devastating reality. For years, she had been secretly keeping her family afloat, both financially and emotionally. But instead of begging for a seat at a table that required her to pay rent, Clara books a luxury holiday cruise to the Caribbean. What happens when her vacation photos drop? The hidden family secrets come to light, and Clara finally claims her own life will leave you stunned. If this story resonates with you, please leave a comment, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more real, empowering stories. Grab a hot beverage, get comfortable, and let's dive into Clara's story. My name is Clara Mercer. I'm 38 years old, and for 14 years, I've worked as a dedicated hospice nurse in Marion, Ohio. When someone's elderly parent is breathing heavily in the dark hours of 2 a.m., I am the steady voice on the phone and the calm presence at the bedside. I sit at worn kitchen tables, smelling stale coffee and heavy grief, explaining gently what the final hours will bring. I'm good at my work, not because I break down with families, but because I remain present when the room gets quiet. That late November, my work routinely brought me to the bedside of Evelyn, an 81-year-old retired math teacher with sharp eyes and an even sharper wit. Evelyn had no surviving spouse, no children, and a home full of neatly catalogued memories. On my very first visit, she sized me up and said, "You carry yourself like a coat hanger everybody hangs their coat on." I respected her immediately. Evelyn solved crossword puzzles in pen and graded my casual check-ins like classroom recitations. Yet when the room quieted down, she'd watch me with quiet curiosity. One afternoon, she asked point-blank who looked after me during the holidays. I laughed, adjusted her blanket, and smoothly changed the subject. The exact move every professional caretaker uses to deflect personal questions. She let it rest that day, but she wouldn't forget. Weeks down the road, Evelyn would share a single insight that fundamentally altered how I viewed my own life. But to understand why her words hit so hard, you first need to understand the architecture of my family. My mother, Eleanor, is 67, widowed for 6 years, and deeply embedded in her local church network. My older brother, Marcus, is 41, living near Columbus with his wife, Sarah, who manages their household with military efficiency. They have 2 kids, Lily, 12, and Ethan, 9. My younger sister, Chloe, is 34, living in Delaware, Ohio, with 3 young children, Ava, Cole, and little June, who called me Auntie Clara. Then there was the crown jewel of our family history, the lake house. Built by my late father on Catawba Island over 3 decades ago. It was a cozy gray cabin on Lake Erie with a broad wooden porch looking out over the water. Every single Christmas of my life had been spent inside those walls. And for years, I was the one who quietly maintained it. I decorated the tree, prepped the main dinners, bought all the stocking stuffers marked from Santa so my sister could sleep in, and made sure the house felt warm and welcoming. On the previous year's Christmas card, my family printed a lovely photo of the 5 grandchildren lined up on that lake house porch. There were no adults in the shot, just the children and the sparkling lake water. I remember holding that card in my hands and noticing something chilling. I wasn't in the picture, nor was anyone without children of their own. At the time, I brushed it off as a cute design choice. But looking back, I realized that eviction from a family rarely happens overnight. It begins with small, polite exclusions everyone pretends are completely normal. There is a chapter of my life I rarely speak about. At 29, I married a kind man named David. Between the ages of 31 and 34, we went through 3 exhausting rounds of IVF treatments. 3 years in a row, I sat in clinic waiting rooms, listening to medical staff explain that another cycle had failed. The emotional toll eventually eroded our marriage. We parted ways amicably. He remarried a few years later, and I genuinely wished him well. What remained from that chapter was a dedicated savings account I had opened during our very first treatment cycle. I had labeled it Someday. After the final papers were signed, it held exactly $9,400. I couldn't bring myself to close it or spend it. It simply sat there like a quiet nursery waiting for a light to be turned on. To cope with my grief, I did what caretakers always do. I funneled my energy into being useful. I became the ultimate family fixer. Whenever Chloe needed last-minute childcare, whenever Mom needed medical paperwork decoded or prescriptions organized, whenever a family birthday or holiday required planning, cooking, or funding, I stepped up. Subconsciously, I believed that if I couldn't expand the family line, I would prove my worth through service. Nobody asked me to do this out loud. I signed that invisible contract all by myself. However, there was one major contribution I made that none of my siblings knew about. 6 years earlier, my father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. Shortly after the funeral, my mother sat me down in private and opened a manila folder. She revealed that Dad had taken out a home equity loan against the lake house to replace a leaking roof and fix an aging furnace. Without his pension income, Mom couldn't manage the loan payments, taxes, and property insurance. The beloved family sanctuary was facing foreclosure within a year. Mom wept and asked me for 2 things: financial assistance and complete secrecy. She begged me not to tell Marcus or Chloe, wanting to preserve their memory of Dad as a flawless provider. Sitting there as a single nurse with no children to support and a steady salary, I agreed. I set up an automated monthly payment of $600 straight from my account to cover the loan, taxes, and insurance. Over 6 years, I made 72 consecutive payments, contributing over $40,000 to keep the lake house in the family. Marcus and Chloe assumed the home was completely paid off and clear. So when the text message finally arrived, the irony was almost unbearable. I was being banished from the very property I was quietly keeping alive. It happened on December 3rd, a cold Wednesday afternoon. I was standing in the hospital corridor charting notes when my phone chimed. The group chat titled Chandler Family Christmas flashed on screen. My sister Chloe sent a carefully constructed message. She explained that last year's holiday at the lake house felt chaotic, and that after much discussion, the core family had decided to try a new arrangement. Then came the sentence that burned itself into my mind. Christmas at the lake house is strictly for parents and kids this year. She added a heart emoji and wrote, "You understand, right? You're the awesome aunt. We'll definitely catch up for lunch in January." After 35 years of holiday traditions in that cottage, I was effectively scheduled out like a routine dental checkup. I watched the responses pop up in real time. Marcus sent a quick thumbs up. His wife posted an animated graphic of Santa nodding. And my mother, whose holiday decorations I put up every winter and whose medical care I managed daily, said absolutely nothing. In my family, silence wasn't neutrality, it was consensus. I typed out 3 different responses, deleted every one of them, slid my phone back into my pocket, and went back into a patient's room to check a medication pump. The following evening, I did something I now look back on with mild embarrassment. I tried to negotiate. I called Chloe and offered to cook the entire Christmas Eve dinner, clean up, and sleep at a motel in town, just popping in briefly on Christmas morning to watch the kids open gifts. I felt smaller with every word, lowering my boundaries like discounted items at a garage sale. Chloe maintained a sweet, cheerful tone the entire time. "It's really nothing personal, Clara," she said soothingly. Having extra adults around just dilutes the holiday magic for the little ones. Extra adults. I sat with that phrase. At 38, I was officially categorized as non-essential headcount. Then Chloe added one final detail. "Honestly, we all discussed it weeks ago and agreed it's the healthiest boundary for everyone." That revelation froze me in place. "When did everyone agree, Chloe?" I asked. There was a pregnant pause on the line. "It just came up naturally during a conversation," she claimed evasively. I ended the call shortly after, realization dawning that a decision had been made about me long before I was ever informed. The following Saturday, I drove over to my mother's home carrying a warm casserole dish. Eleanor was sitting at the dining table organizing her holiday cards. Before I could even remove my coat, she avoided eye contact and said softly, "Please don't cause any drama, Clara. Chloe is overwhelmed with the young kids, and it's just one Christmas." I asked her directly if she had participated in the decision. She aligned her stack of envelopes neatly and replied, "We just want what's best for the grandchildren." Standing in her entry hall, I recognized the underlying truth. My mother's main concern was how things looked to her social circle at church, where family standing was measured in traditional nuclear units. A single, childless daughter didn't fit neatly into the picture-perfect narrative she presented to the world. On my way out, my eyes brushed past her open mail counter, where a bank statement showed the automatic mortgage transfer I funded every month. The disparity hit me with full force. 9 days after the initial text, my 12-year-old niece, Lily, called me on video to show off a school project. During our chat, she casually mentioned, "Mom said back in October that you wouldn't be coming to the lake house this year." I kept my voice calm and asked her about it. Lily explained that her mother had an active side group chat called Christmas Logistics, where all the holiday planning had been taking place for over a month. That was the turning point. All through November, while I helped Mom put up lights, took her to doctor appointments, and picked up my sister's kids from school, my entire family had been participating in a private group chat, systematically planning my exclusion. My mother had known for 6 full weeks while letting me serve her. That night, instead of brooding, I went into my shift early. Evelyn took one look at my face and set down her puzzle. "Sit down," she demanded. "You're carrying too much today." For the first time in my career, I confided in a patient. I told her about the text, the secret chat, and the years of quiet financial support. Evelyn listened intently with her hands folded. She then shared her own story. 50 years of teaching, paying for nieces' and nephews' expenses, and hosting every holiday dinner. But when her health declined and she could no longer host or provide, the visits stopped. "I spent decades buying my seat at their table," Evelyn said quietly. "It took me a lifetime to realize I was only ever renting it. The moment you stop paying the rent, the chair disappears. Don't wait until you're in a bed like mine to figure out the math. You're giving your energy to people who only measure your value by what you do for them." Her words settled deep in my chest. That midnight, I drove home with complete clarity. Sitting at my kitchen table, I opened my laptop. A travel advertisement for a luxury ocean cruise appeared on screen. I clicked through to inspect the details. 7 nights touring the Eastern Caribbean, departing from Fort Lauderdale on December 23rd. There was one remaining suite with an ocean view balcony. The total cost came out to nearly $5,000. I opened my banking portal, looked at the untouched Someday account with its $9,400 balance, and initiated the transfer. Someday finally had an exact date, December 23rd. I booked the trip in full. As the booking confirmation popped up on screen, I renamed the account to Now. 5 days before my departure flight, I posted a brief update in the family thread. "Confirmed, I will be traveling out of town for the holidays. Enjoy your time at the lake house." The reaction was instantaneous. Chloe immediately responded with multiple question marks, demanding to know where I was going. Sarah chimed in, asking if everything was all right and calling the trip sudden. Shortly after, my mother called. She didn't ask about my safety or my travel plans. Instead, her voice trembled as she asked, "What am I supposed to tell people at church when they ask where you are?" "Tell them the truth, Mom," I replied calmly. "Tell them I wasn't invited." "That's completely unfair, Clara," she insisted. "Nobody said you weren't welcome." But she paused, unable to finish the thought because we both knew the truth. I told her I loved her, hung up the phone and focused on packing. Preparing for a full week away was an unprecedented step for me. I hadn't taken extended time off in over a decade. My supervisor was surprised but approved the leave immediately. The families of my hospice patients offered warm hugs and encouraged me to enjoy the break. Evelyn reviewed my travel itinerary with an approving nod and told me, "Send me a postcard from your real life." While packing my suitcase, my hand brushed against my primary key ring. Attached to it was a heavy, worn brass key. My father had hand-cut that key at his workbench when I turned 16, scratching a rough letter C into the top. "This is so you can always let yourself into the lake house," he had told me. "No knocking, no asking. You always have a home here." For 22 years, That key had stayed with me through every major life milestone. Standing in my bedroom, banned from the very door it unlocked, I tried to pry it off the metal ring. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I slipped the entire key ring into the zippered pocket of my carry-on bag. I didn't fully understand why at the time, but that brass key was heading 2,000 miles south with me. On December 23rd, I arrived in Fort Lauderdale to warm, 81-degree tropical air. Boarding the ocean liner felt like stepping into an entirely different reality. The ship was magnificent. 14 decks of polished interiors, glowing chandeliers, and exceptional service. My balcony suite offered a panoramic view of the wide blue ocean. Waiting inside was a chilled bottle of champagne accompanied by a card reading, "Welcome aboard, Clara. We're glad you're here." As the ship set sail at 4 p.m., I stood at the aft rail watching the Florida coast fade into the distance. All the pressure, family expectations, and lingering resentment shrank alongside the shoreline. I reached into my bag and unconsciously rubbed my thumb over the hand-engraved C on my dad's key. The ocean extended endlessly before me, calm and indifferent. I took a simple photo of the vast horizon over the railing, but kept it saved on my phone for the time being. Christmas Eve on a cruise ship is a vibrant celebration, complete with holiday decorations, vocal performances, and festive dinners. Surrounded by families in matching attire, I felt a brief moment of nostalgia while standing in the atrium. "First holiday away from home?" a voice asked nearby. I turned to see a tall woman in an elegant emerald dress holding her heels. Her name was Nadia, an anesthesiologist from Atlanta traveling solo following a divorce. "My ex kept the high-maintenance in-laws," she joked smoothly. "Best deal I ever made." We ended up dining together, joining two warm-hearted retirees from Michigan and a former maritime captain who had spent the last 9 holiday seasons cruising independently. The conversation was refreshing. No one questioned my life choices or measured my worth by family status. At midnight, standing on my private balcony in the quiet ocean air, I checked my phone. Signal coverage was strong, but my notifications were completely empty. Not a single text from my mother, brother, or sister. The silence was intended as a statement, but instead, it brought me a profound sense of relief. On Christmas morning, bright sunlight flooded the ocean. I dressed in a light white sundress, and Nadia met me on the upper sun deck. She took my phone and insisted on capturing a few photos. "You need proof of how liberated you look right now," she insisted. The photos were striking. Me laughing spontaneously near the wooden railing, holding a morning coffee, with brilliant blue waters stretching behind me. Sitting on a deck lounge chair, I opened my social media app. I didn't feel any urge to write a bitter message. Instead, I uploaded a single photo with a simple, clear caption. "Merry Christmas from a place where I am genuinely happy to be." I tagged no one, added no extra commentary, set my phone face down, and went to enjoy breakfast. When our ship docked in San Juan the following morning, I turned on my cellular data. Over 40 missed messages flooded the screen. The notifications fell into 2 distinct categories. The first group came from colleagues, distant acquaintances, and old friends expressing encouragement and support. The second group came directly from my family, and their tone was furious. Chloe wrote, "Unbelievably selfish of you to post that on Christmas Day. You just had to turn the attention on to yourself." Sarah sent a stern message. "I hope you realize what you've done. Your mother had to answer awkward questions at church services about why her daughter is on a cruise boat. You've created a public embarrassment." Once again, their concern wasn't about my well-being or happiness. Their sole focus was social optics and how my absence reflected on them. That evening, Marcus called. He adopted his usual pragmatic tone. "Look, Clara, no one wants to fight," he began. "But you've made your point. Delete the post, send Chloe a quick text to smooth things over, and we can all move past this. You're making Mom look bad." "Marcus, explain how a photo of me smiling on vacation makes Mom look bad." I countered steadily. "There are no names mentioned, no complaints written. Why is my happiness considered an attack?" He hesitated on the line. "Because everyone knows you weren't invited to the lake house," he admitted quietly. "People from church and town are asking questions. It's turning into a whole situation." If the reality of how this family operates causes embarrassment when revealed, the issue isn't the photo, Marcus, I said firmly, before wishing him a good night. Early the next morning in St. Thomas, a notification arrived from my work colleague, Denise. Evelyn had passed away peacefully in her sleep on Christmas night. Sitting quietly on my balcony, I felt a wave of sadness for my remarkable patient. A second text from Denise informed me that Evelyn had left a card for me at the station. Denise attached a photo of it. A bright, colorful card containing Evelyn's precise handwriting. "Sit down at your own table, Clara." I looked at those words for a long time. Reaching into my carry-on, I took out my dad's brass key. I realized I hadn't brought it along out of habit. I had brought it because I needed to decide whether I was ever going to let myself back into a life built on conditional acceptance. Meanwhile, my vacation photo had been shared by an acquaintance into an online community for women travelers. Within hours, hundreds of women were leaving comments, sharing their own experiences of being sidelined by family dynamics, excluded from holiday traditions, or expected to provide continuous support without reciprocity. The shared stories made it clear that my situation wasn't unique. It was a widespread pattern. That evening, Chloe called me directly. For the first time, her polished facade broke. Crying openly, she said, "You post one picture and everyone praises you. You get to travel and have freedom, while I'm exhausted taking care of kids every single day. Please just take the post down." "No, Chloe," I answered simply and directly. It was the first time in 38 years I had offered a clear, unvarnished no to my family. Following my refusal, my family created a new group thread without holiday emojis. Marcus and Sarah laid out a formal demands list. Delete the photos, apologize to Chloe for the drama, and apologize to Mom in person. The text concluded with a direct ultimatum. If you refuse to cooperate, the family will reassess your involvement in family decisions moving forward, including managing Mom's personal and medical affairs. They were threatening to remove me from managing my mother's health care. The very demanding responsibility none of them had ever stepped up to share. They believed my instinct to care for others was a leverage point they could manipulate. Beneath their message, my mother added a short line. "Clara, please just come home." I sat on my balcony late into the night, placing two items side by side on the small table. 1. My phone displaying the banking portal where my automatic $600 monthly transfer was scheduled to execute on the 1st of the month. 2. The brass key, gleaming under the deck lights. The choice was clear. If I continued paying for a property I was barred from enjoying, I was accepting a dynamic built on extraction. If I stopped, the entire structure would shift. At 6 a.m. the following morning, Marcus called again, his voice rushed. "Mom slipped on the icy back steps last night," he reported urgently. "This is what happens when you aren't here. You need to book a flight home immediately, clear this mess up, and maybe we can resolve everything by New Year's." Years of clinical training kicked in. Instead of panicking, I asked precise medical questions. Is she conscious? Did she sustain a head injury? Who is currently with her? Marcus paused, thrown off by my calm demeanor. He confirmed she was conscious and that her neighbor, Carol, had driven her to the urgent care clinic. I ended the call with Marcus and dialed Mom directly. She answered right away. Her left wrist was sprained and set in a splint, but she had sustained no severe injuries and was already resting back at home. Carol was staying with her to help out. I spent 20 minutes coordinating genuine support, arranging a meal delivery rotation with Carol, and scheduling a routine follow-up with her primary doctor. Once Mom's actual care was settled, I faced the ultimatum. I reviewed the flight options to return home early, but then remembered Evelyn's words and Nadia's perspective. Love doesn't operate like a transactional invoice. I picked up my phone and executed 3 deliberate decisions. First, I messaged Marcus and the group thread. Mom's care is coordinated, and I will continue checking in with her daily as her daughter. The travel photos remain online. Furthermore, the financial arrangements regarding the lake house end effective today. Mom understands what this entails. Second, I called my bank's customer service line. Within minutes, I permanently canceled the recurring $600 monthly transfer for the lake house mortgage, taxes, and insurance. After 72 payments totaling over $40,000, my financial subsidization ended. Third, I took out a sheet of ship stationery and wrote a private letter to my mother. I detailed the financial support I had quietly provided over the last 6 years, and explained that while I would always love and support her as a daughter, I would no longer maintain an arrangement that required my own exclusion. I folded the letter and prepared to enclose the brass key. Canceling the payments meant the family would likely have to sell the lake house, as neither Marcus nor Chloe could take on the monthly cost. It meant letting go of a place tied to my father's memory, but I recognized that holding on to the physical building at the expense of my own dignity was no longer viable. Upon returning to Florida on December 30th, I placed the letter and the brass key into a secure envelope and mailed it directly to my mother's home. By early spring, the reality of the situation took effect. Without my monthly contributions, the lake house was listed for sale in March. Marcus declined to assume the payments, and Chloe was unable to do so. While selling the property brought a sense of sorrow, it was a necessary resolution. Family dynamics shifted permanently. Certain extended relatives voiced disapproval, while others privately expressed admiration for my decision to establish firm boundaries. Over time, Chloe and I established a distant but respectful communication channel, centered primarily around photos of her children. The most surprising development involved my mother. Carol mentioned that Eleanor sat silently for hours after receiving the envelope containing the brass key. On a cold Sunday afternoon in late February, a knock came at my apartment door. I opened it to find my mother standing there holding a familiar tin of homemade cookies. In the 4 years I had lived in my apartment, she had never visited my home. She stepped inside, looking around the living room. She didn't offer a dramatic speech, but she pulled the brass key from her coat pocket. "Your father made this key so you would always have access," she said quietly. I kept it in my pocket to remind myself that our connection shouldn't depend on a physical house or keeping up appearances. She then asked if she could stay for dinner. We sat at my small kitchen table, sharing a simple meal and talking about old memories. It wasn't a complete transformation of our family history, but it was an authentic step forward. Conclusion. 1 year later, during the next holiday season, I hosted Christmas dinner at my own apartment. We pushed 2 tables together to make room for a vibrant group of guests. Colleagues from hospice, friends from the online travel group, and neighbors. My mother arrived carrying her cookie tin, accompanied by little June. As she looked around the crowded room, she asked where she should sit. "Any seat you like," I smiled. "At this table, everyone is welcome." If Clara's story resonated with you today, remember that your value is never defined by how much you sacrifice to keep a place at someone else's table. You deserve relationships based on genuine mutual respect, not transactional obligations. Thank you for spending time with us today on Drama Stories. Please share your thoughts in the comments below, give this video a thumbs up, and subscribe for more moving real-life stories. Until next time, take good care of yourselves.